he was getting VHS copies of car robots and then encoding
as
them
6 megabyte
to
real
be
media videos.
So
you were watching
Yeah.
live bootlegs of a Japanese cartoon with the resolution size of a postage stamp, and that's kind of how TFW started.
But it was one of the big postage stamps.
What the fuck's going on down there?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. We're doing a supplemental that Aaron had a big hand in putting together. We're going to talk about the Transformers TCG because it's very soon going to come out in the United States. And granted, I am just one of the 2 top Canadian players, which I can prove because Aaron only sent 2 starter decks over to this country, and I know who the other one is. And we are joined by
a cackling man.
By one cackling Drew Nolosco, if I've pronounced that right.
Hey, everyone.
Hello. He's visiting us on Discord via Wizards of the Coast, and he's got some hands in this little Transformers TCG game that's about to come out. Lots of hands, in fact.
Well, all my hands, but
several. Yeah, both. Several. 3, if it was possible.
I mean, I try, but I feel very limited with my two upper limbs.
That's what the upcoming Cyborg future is for. But yeah, this game really took me by surprise, in part because it's a branded Transformers card game that appears to have the potential of actual depth. And it's got a venerable company backing it. And before we get straight into that game, I just wanted to quickly get from you, like, what's your history with tabletop gaming in general? Like, how'd you get into the business? What's some other stuff you might have worked on?
So I've been doing this for a long time. At Wizards, I've been at Wizards for close to 8 years now. Immediately prior to this, I was the lead designer for a product called Magic Duels, which was a version of Magic the Gathering on iOS, Xbox, and Steam. And so lead designer for a digital product doesn't mean I make the actual card designs. It's, the digital design of what the user's experience are, how they move through the product, what kind of learning experience is, what the UX is. And I did that for a number of years. Before that, at Wizards, and the reason I was hired at Wizards was to be the design and creative lead for a game called Kaijudo.
Oh, I've heard of that. I saw that at my LGS, in fact.
I'm glad that you support your local friendly gaming store.
Yes.
Or friendly local gaming store. Parsing is important. So I was the sort of creative lead for that, and I worked with What Is the World Like? And I worked with Hasbro Studios because there was a TV show for that game. And I did that for a few years. And then before I joined Wizards, I was at WizKids, which does occasionally get confusing.
Oh, I had a period in the 2000s where I spent about 3 years being way heavy into HeroClix.
So I was the product development manager and lead for HeroClix.
Good Lord.
You've been following Drew this whole time.
It turns out the world's actually tiny.
I like how you supported my products for a long time now.
Let me tell you, when you guys did that Darkhawk HeroClix, that was kind of peak for me, but in a good way.
So not that version. So HeroClix, that was the original HeroClix when it was out here in Seattle. And then later on, it sort of moved around. WizKids moved from company to company for a little bit. I was the most recent iteration of WizKids, which was owned by NECA, the collectibles company, and that was in New Jersey. I'm an East Coaster, even though I'm based in Seattle now.
Oh, is it weird being over in Seattle? Or are you acclimatized yet? Like I've used to be a West Coaster and I moved out east, and it's been quite a while, but I'm still kind of acclimatizing.
And, it's been almost 8 years, and I haven't really. And the things that people said that would be the most difficult for me to acclimatize to are not the things that I found difficult to adjust to. Like, people are like, "Oh my God, it's rain." And I'm like, that's fine. But what is super weird is Seattle is very high north latitude, and so the winter days are really short, and the summer days are really long, and that still freaks me out. I just can't adjust to that.
Yeah, over here in the East in Toronto, like it's. I mean, I used to come out here as a kid. I'm used to like the extreme summers and winters to a degree, or at least I'm not surprised by them. But it's the pressure changes over the course of weeks that actually messes with me a lot. Like the temperature's one thing, but then like I'll wake up just with these headaches or nose aches, and I had to talk to my brother about it because he moved here in the '90s, and he told me, yeah, that's just part of being on the West Coast and being over here.
There's also mountains, which
yes.
I didn't grow up with. That's new and novel still, and they're also large, like mountain. Like we had like mountains back home in the East Coast. I'm from Brooklyn, but like mountains were like hills. Like,
I'm a Midwest boy. Everything is flat, right, with corn and or beans.
Right. So your mountains are like 300 feet tall.
Maybe.
Yeah. But I love Wizards, and I am super happy here, and it has been really exciting for me to have the opportunity and take all my history. And before that, I did kids games, I did licensed games, I've done Star Trek tabletop games, and Lost, and Harry Potter, and Twilight, which is a fun story for another time. Emphasis another time. But I have a lot of experience in kids games and licensed products, and kind of there's no real way to describe it sort of systematically, but like your first introduction to tabletop gaming experiences, which is one of the reasons why I was on Magic Duels, which was sort of like how we introduced people to Magic. So, and Transformers is super, super cool for me because I get to take all that experience, like all of these weapons that I built up in my professional experience, just apply them to one target simultaneously. Transformers.
It must be helpful to have gone through all that licensed game experience as well to like come into a Transformers tabletop where you're ready for those extra pipelines and the extra stuff that comes with doing something that's attached to a major license that's cross media.
And it absolutely is. It was enormously helpful. And even though Wizards is Hasbro, right? So
right.
We are part and parcel Hasbro. So it's not technically a licensing experience. We're just Hasbro. But in the way that we look at the IP and the way we relate to the Transformers creative and brand and world building teams and consumer products teams, that experience that I've had really has made it very easy to sync up with them because I know what they expect is the people who protect IP that they love. Mm-hmm. And when we come into this, we had to prove ourselves. Like we had to prove ourselves to the people who have lived Transformers, John Warden, Chris Nadeau, Sonal, like all of these folks who have put out the great stuff that you guys love and your listeners love. And frankly, that we love because people on Transformers at Wizard tend to be really big Transformers fans.
You mean you don't go over to that group and like, go watch really? I mean...
So, no. But we're trying to come up with what is the April Fool's joke.
I'm not saying
you're going for the unset right off the bat. I like it.
I mean, it is an alternate universe, right? Like it's part of the canon.
Right. Yeah.
It's part of the canon.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it as an April Fool's joke. I'm saying I think that actually could have legs as an expansion. But that's just me. I actually like me some GoBots. They're one of my. I grew up with them alongside Transformers, and so it's one of my little renaissances in the last few years has been really enjoying watching other people come around on them as an alternate kind of thing, or that IDW comic that's about to come out that Tom Scioli is working on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very exciting. That was mostly a joke.
I'm not joking. I'm just throwing it out there.
We appreciate the hedge with mostly.
Yeah.
Well, the mostly part is whether or not it's an April Fool's joke or not.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
We're gonna stay Generations for a while, and as our primary source universe, and that was a very intentional choice with Hasbro because that gives us the widest access to characters over time, and it lets us stay grounded in toy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is really important for us.
Well, with the game now just a couple weeks away, and actually what great timing! Your guys' social media accounts all opened up like the day or two ago.
Yep.
The Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. What just I guess in short, what are your anticipations and expectations from this launch, on the 28th?
So I think we're going to get a lot of people who have been really clamoring for what a taste of this is like, and didn't make it to places like Gen Con where I and the staff could teach them. I think they're going to dive right in. There's a lot of really interesting and different stuff with the Transformers trading card game. We do some things that are kind of unusual. Just like the oversized cards, for example. That's
right.
The cards that are double-sided. There's a lot of things that really are. You get a visceral experience that's different from when you hold it and when you play it. Then it's different from looking at it in an image or a video. So I think a lot of people are just going to go out and get a starter set and just start sitting down with their friends and having that Transformers tabletop experience. And then not too long after that, Metroplex comes out. So we're sort of hitting. We're going to start hitting a cadence of new stuff.
That Metroplex reveal was actually a big cementer for me in thinking that there are, aside from just, a game having its base potential, that Metroplex set kind of got my future thinking excitement raised quite a bit, because it looks like Metroplex is not only an alternate box set you can pick up, but it looks like he's introducing some unique, at least one unique mechanic, being the enormous Metroplex card.
And that was entirely intentional. We knew that there was sort of a 1-2 punch going on. We show oversized double-sided foil cards. That's super new and exciting. And for people who are who have watched not just Magic, but a lot of the things that WotC has done in its past 25 years, that alone, those three things may have sparked I wonder if. But then when they see Metroplex, they're like, oh, they are taking the printing technology that they've developed and deploying it.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what we're doing. We have a ton of cool stuff that we've developed.
So then Cybertron is just going to be like a play mat, right? Just one side is one, and then you change it over, and it's Primus. And
we're coming out with our own pave your own drive kit.
Oh, sweet! I've always wanted an excuse to have to do that, because I'm not going to do that on my own. That's boring. But if I can turn it into a giant card, then I'm set.
Yeah. Let's pick up the difficult part is flipping.
Yeah. No, I've got the lock. You just got to come to my house. I can't play at yours. That's
the balance for the meta, right? If you can't flip it, then you can't play it. Ergo, if it's a bit overpowered, hey, not everyone can flip a driveway plate over, right? So,
for now, you look back at the history of Wizards. You've seen our attempts to try out new and interesting things, and some of it worked particularly in our Japanese card game Duel Masters, but some of it no one has seen because it's never been released. It was never an appropriate product for it, but there's an amazing amount of things you can do with cards. And our goal is to take each Transformers character and look at it and say, when we make the card, when the player, when the kid, when the adult looks at it and does whatever the thing is, whether it's a two-sided card and they flip it, or what have you, or they look at how big it is and say, oh yeah, that's clearly a city. That they say that it immediately sharpens in their mind as, oh, that's the character. It's just a card form of that. And so there's that natural, and we can do it. We have a little contest not too long ago about which would be the most difficult character for us to do, and we ended up coming up with some interesting ideas.
Whenever that is cleared for sharing, you guys have got to put up a blog post or something.
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
The solution was
this is where you're supposed to say, reach back out to us and give us the exclusive, Chris.
What, Aaron? What? That was a weird noise that came out of your microphone. I don't know what's up. You should fix it. But I was going to say, Drew, just going off of that, I noticed also you were posting a lot in the fan-made Transformers TCG Facebook group.
Yes.
And it was really nice to see that much outreach from someone who's, basically got all two of their hands on this project, because that and the Metroplex set are both the kind of thing that make me feel like you guys are very confidently thinking, a year ahead on what to do with this system.
I am currently working on the fall 2019 products.
Oh, right.
Nice.
That's a whole year ahead.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, there's a lot of thematic mechanics in this game, and one of the things that keeps games like Magic being an easy example kind of alive is experimenting with and introducing new mechanics. And I would have, before the Metroplex confirmation, said, are you guys thinking about other Transformers relative mechanics like city bots? And clearly you are. So like, obviously you can't like just say what you're working on, but it sounds to me like if people look at other very Transformer centric, gimmick ideas like combiners, like Power Link, like mini cons and stuff, it seems like that's all, if it's not like literally being worked on, it seems like it's all very much on the plate, or at least like it's in reach of you guys and what you're doing.
It's absolutely in scope of what this brand is and what it can be on an ongoing basis. And I'm going to turn that back at you. So if you look at each of these gimmicks, sublines, and they can be anything from 3 characters did this, the pullback characters, or the sparking gimmick from some of the G1,
the spark bots or cons or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. What are each of your top 2 that you'd want to see us do?
For something like this, I think how you'd manifest triple changers would be interesting. Because I could definitely see like a robot balance, but then the jet is the high attack, but the tank of like Blitzwing is the maybe higher defense. I could see some interesting play in there. And then everybody's always going to say combiners because combiners combine. Okay, cool. And I ask this question to a lot of people, and I get a lot of very convergent answers. So different or the same?
So I mean, yeah, combiner. I was almost going to say like combiners almost shouldn't be an answer we give, because I'm sure that's what 3 out of 4 people just say immediately.
Right.
Especially given like going outside tabletop, all the mobile games, the first thing people ask if they like them is like, how are you guys going to do combiners? But for me, like one of them would be I'd love to see some of the weirder, like not necessarily combiners in the classic sense, but stuff like Reflector. Like 3 guys turn into 1 alt mode. And when I say that, I'm thinking about a Magic card I found out about 2 months ago that I presented to Aaron as a brand new thing that he said, yes, I know, I have that. I bought that years ago when it came out. Was these 2 like infected angel characters, and you could flip them both over, and the back side of the card was half of a larger card because they would like body horror fuse together. Yeah, meld being the mechanic. Yep. So that's one. The other one would actually be, I'd be really interested to see you guys do Action Masters, where they don't have an alt mode, but maybe they have like a Nucleon power up for the other side.
So the Action Masters are super interesting because there's no conversion there, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But there are a bunch of state changes that can occur with Action Masters. Are they mounted on their vehicle? Are they dismounted?
Ooh.
Is their vehicle in, and the vehicles themselves tended to convert. Like Optimus was riding in basically a bigger Optimus.
Yeah, it was a giant truck.
Yeah.
but that turned into a battle station. So there is conversion possible in what the vehicles do. So a lot of people sort of challenge me, like, you can't do Action Masters because they don't convert. And there are definitely ways that we could do Action Masters. I will say Action Masters are not super top on the list of things to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't expect it. My main actual goal is to get the 4 Action Masters who did transform, the Action Master Elites. I want to get those into every form of media possible, due to personal nostalgia. So I'm just saying, boy, I would be singing some praises if we saw Omega Spreem, the transforming Action Master Elite, just pop up in this game at some point.
Yes, not Omega Supreme, but Omega Spreem.
Right.
Yes, the good one, the better one.
Hold your tongue. We're gonna have to have words about that.
I got some personal canon that I have not been shy to share with people until they left the bar and I kept talking.
And talking and
Aaron's
and
a good
talking.
friend. He just stays there and waits for me to finish. And
yeah,
it's one way to have more beer.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the personal connection I find with people with sort of niche characters is that it was one of the first toys that they were given or purchased or acquired. Is right. That the relationship with you and Omega Spreem?
Omega Spreem is it's not one of the first ones I had, but he's most representative of this. In my childhood, I got to go to Germany a lot due to family, and I didn't really understand how odd that was until many years later, or that G1 in North America had ended a long time before I thought it had ended, because one of the cool things about Transformers is it never stopped coming out worldwide, and that's partly thanks to Europe. So I was going to Europe a lot when Europe was the only place that had Transformers coming out for about a year or two. And Omega Spreem is the one Action Master Elite that I had from my childhood, and to me, he just represents that period, along with Action Master Thundercracker, who I also had, oddly enough. But Spreem is just like this encapsulated little, like, in case you ever thought Transformers died and came back, they didn't, thanks to this brave fellow here and his teal head with pink visor.
On his European vacation.
Exactly. Yeah. This mis-Romanized Omega Spreem, who's much smaller. And bends over, and now he's a tank. There's a lot. That's the main connection for me. Like I have connection to my first Transformers as well, but because I was a spoiled kid, a lot of it comes down to these Transformers that represent periods or moments.
Right, that makes sense. So I'm a little bit sad in that I had to put personal preference aside, and I couldn't get. Not that I really tried very hard, but I couldn't get the first toys that I acquired into the first set.
And that was?
So I could really, when I was a youngster, if I saved up a little bit of allowance and did some chores and stuff, I could get like one small Transformer. So Brawn and a little bit later on Warpath and Power Glide were some of the first Transformers that I had and really like fell in love with. And then Grapple, I realized at some point that if I mowed lawn and saved that money instead of like going immediately out and buying another tiny Transformer, I could get a larger Transformer. So I kind of learned personal economics, and delayed gratification. And I ended up getting Grapple because I loved construction tucks. When I had been a little tiny kid, I liked, the big metal Tonka style stuff. And I had a couple of those. And so Grapple just sort of like beelines to that. I guess 9, 10 at this point. Couldn't have been very old. I was just old enough to mow a lawn, not get like devoured by it.
Yeah. Well, this gives you time then to make sure that when Grapple does come out, he's also like a meta-defining card. Like he'll be like the Snapcaster Mage of Transformers TCG, skyrocketing in value immediately.
It's funny. It's funny that is always the temptation when working on a licensed product. Like as a game designer, and my background, I'm brand manager now, and so a very small amount of the game design here, like when we were early doing system design. But my background, I've done a lot of game design, and it's very easy, particularly if you're a fan of the thing that you're designing, to say, "Oh, well, clearly," and then just go into it.
This would happen if I did it. Like, as I just explained, we would have the Omega Spreem designed to have the quintupled aftermarket value, because he deserves it, darn it.
Right?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you like your job or not, but Grapple has to be in every deck, so figure that out.
But then that's the thing. Is like, is it right for the brand? Is it true to the IP? Is it true to the character?
Right. I got to ask though, your love of the mini bots, did that, or I'm just curious how this happened. Cosmos seems like a very powerful card, stats wise and ability wise, and it just feels very much like Cosmos was somebody's version of this. Like somebody was like, hey, if we're doing Cosmos, what if, right, with the justification, hey, he turns into a UFO. What if he's also like one of the most powerful Autobots?
So it's not that, although I can see why you say that. I actually never owned Cosmos. I've never owned a Cosmos. I didn't even own the Generations version of Cosmos much later, which is a really, really cool, very awesomely designed toy. And it's sitting actually on a number of desks over the 8 years. I've seen that probably more than any other character at Wizards. But one of the things that we do when we launch the first set is sort of have some cards that help define the boundaries. And some of the boundaries need to be, that's awesome. It's not the sort of incremental plus and minus this and that. And like, this guy is like 10% better than that. Some things have to be wild. And that helps show everybody who's encountering this product for the first time, this game for the first time, that you can do these amazing things in it. And even if you can't stuff the entire first set with all of these crazy things, because it needs to have the basic elements of a trading card game, you need to have some of that. Omega Spreem. I'm never going to get. Nemesis Prime is one of those cards. Cosmos cards. There's a few more in the set. A couple of them haven't been revealed yet. Mirage, interestingly, is one of those cards because his ability that lets him untap himself actually is a very, very, very interesting sort of game-changing ability. It's subtle, but it changes the flow of the game back and forth between the players because it changes when everybody untaps.
I noticed this playing starter versus starter, which on its surface is going to be kind of the flattest version of the game because it's 2 clone decks, 2 clone teams. But then we worked in a couple Gen Con cards and noticed that not only does like the different team sizes do this, but even starter versus starter, if we put in some of the Gen Con, like those 2 Gen Con battle cards, when we were starting to manipulate the rhythm of tapping, so it wasn't just 1 for 1 for 1 for 1 and then everyone reset, it was immediately introducing what felt like another layer of metagame.
And that's exactly it. That is depth, absolutely one of the second or third order layers of the game. And there's a number of cards that do it. The card in the starter deck that untaps a 10-star or less character.
Yeah.
Tangent. It's really cool that the characters have names that are well known. But one of the things that when you end up talking to trading card game designers, we never remember the printed names of cards because we playtest them under completely different names.
Okay.
And you see this all the time. So we end up just referring to the card that untaps 10 stars or less. It's got Ironhide on it. I can remember that.
Yep.
Cards like that definitely add in this. The base game is you, then me, and you, then me, and then we untap. And then stuff like Mirage, and Mirage particularly because it can be a repeatable effect if you're lucky, they change that cadence, and suddenly things start happening in sort of this order that sort of just gets a little bit out of tune, and the games start to get less and less alike, which is good.
Right. Ready for action.
Ready for action, of course. It has the name that's most apt for untapping a character.
This is reminding me of a conversation I had with there's a local games development group here in Toronto who have this martial arts game they're trying to kickstart right now, and I like it a lot. I met them at a couple conventions and talked to the designer a bunch, and I'm hearing a lot of very similar stuff here of like, you play with cards internally, it can be hard to remember what form they're in on release, like as far as like the name and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, also like going into a game knowing what your meta is as the designer and being able to share that is I like in my limited couple months so far of getting as an adult way into tabletop gaming, it's one of my favorite conversations to have. Like hearing about changing the rhythm is an intentional thing to mess with the meta, or like hearing about one thing for this martial arts game on Cage was not obvious counter cards, where it's like you design one card and you've designed another card that quietly actually is a companion piece for this other card. Not in a very direct way, not in this is a combo to play, but as like, I guess just like a soft counter or like quietly a way to balance the game on the overall level. I think the characters feel like almost the bigger place for this in Transformers, but like, did you design any characters almost as like this character is sort of made to have some good moments when across the table from this other character, or like teams or something like that?
So there are definitely some pre-baked team arrangements in the game. You'll notice that there's some characters who coincidentally add up to like 24 or 25 stars, and they have some nice synergies together. We test across the table, like what teams versus what teams a lot, but at least for this game, we very rarely have said we're not in like the silver bullet phase of design.
Yeah.
That's not something I personally think is awesome, although there are times to apply it. But no, it's more of team synergies are important. And like the first order team synergy is really obvious. You play Dinobots, you play Insecticons, you play cars, trucks, tanks, and jets. And those are the ones that are most obviously tested at the surface level to play together. Some of the weirder cards, like the sort of game system breaking cards like Cosmos and Nemesis Prime.
Yeah.
Those have a different way we test them, because there's a whole bunch of possible combinations that they're sort of self-contained weirdness. Did I answer your question?
I think so. Yeah, that's the main thing I was curious about. And also, I'd heard like there's a lot of stuff I'd heard kind of third hand stuff like the more subtle and quietly pre-baked team arrangements. And I guess that there's two other things I remember I'd heard kind of third hand. I want to just quickly go through with you, which are things that made it into the final game that came about through playtesting, which was the first one being the layout of turn 1, turn 2, and then the rest of the turns.
Yes, that absolutely was the result of playtesting.
It felt so much like something to prevent the game from becoming decided on turn 1 or 2 just through blind luck, basically.
Yes, that's exactly it. So I like variance as a designer and as a brand manager. Variance helps games feel like individual, like you versus me in this instant, feel different from one another, and that's really positive. There's too much variance means things go wild, and too little variance means things are predictable. And in just about every single trading card game has, and many games have first turn player advantage, and the first player restrictions and the second turn player restrictions are a result of a lot of playtesting in order to bring that back down to it doesn't matter as much who goes first, and that makes the games fair and and it was a way to also preserve all of the other things that we really liked about the game system without having to radically.
Yeah. Well, the other one that I'd heard third hand was that, like, obviously in the game as it is now, you just have character cards. You assemble a team up to a certain points limit. But at one point, it sounded like there was the idea that there would be a factional divide between Autobots and Decepticons, and that in playtesting, it was found that removing that divide, while it removes an obvious thematic rule, it makes the game more open.
So that is both true and kind of not true at the same time, in that our design process starts with the system, and we wanted to know what the core system, the core game loop was, and develop that. And then we layered in factions. And there was a lot of iteration there. So we went back and redid a system and tried a new system. But one of the things that we knew from relatively early once we had identified the game system is that we would let players cross-faction team build. And there were a couple of reasons for it. One, it drastically increases the deck permutations possible, and that is probably the single most important part. And then the second thing is it allowed us to do, once we knew that we were going to tags, the jet, leader, ranged, etc., we knew that we could play around with both subtly pushing towards cross-faction as well as at the same time having other combinations of cards that subtly push towards one faction or the other only. And some of the ways you see that are some of the equipment that can only be played on a particular character. That asks you to put some combinations of cards together. Doing things like putting Jetfire in the first set was exceptionally intentional so that we could have a major named character on the Autobot side who could cross over into a jet-themed deck, a plane-themed deck that was primarily Decepticon character.
Oh, cool. I hadn't thought about that.
So he is specifically one of those. Nemesis Prime is specifically, well, for a bunch of reasons, but Nemesis Prime is there as a truck character on Decepticons for that reason. If you look, you'll see there's a couple of characters in each of the factions who are there as the enemy faction member of alt mode team building team.
Okay. I was just going to say, like it seemed like if you guys had gone with a faction divide, this also just skips the step of probably one of the first things people would ask for in set 2 would have been some mechanic to let cross-faction happen.
Yes, right. That's inevitable, right? Some people are want to do factional, and some people are going to want to do cross-factional. And, you know, when you're playing at the kitchen tabletop, if you want to house rule that, that's awesome. Yeah. Go for it. Like, that's the beauty of games like this. You were talking about, you know, playing Magic at your tabletop and what that experience was for you, and that was unique to your house and your experience. And trading card games will let you do. If a store wanted to say, "Hey, today we're running Autobot versus Decepticon Day," that's cool too. They can do that. The game system doesn't prevent you from playing that way if you wish to. Whereas if we had done it as faction only, it would have been very difficult to allow the other style of play.
Right.
That actually answers a couple questions I had just about thematic mechanics decisions. Everything else is kind of just like nitty-gritty number stuff. Like, there are 3 battle card types. The deck construction rule seems to have just ended up with actually one of my favorite deck construction limits, which is 3 of as the max per.
Very intentional. Super, super intentional. Because it doesn't divide even to 40.
Yeah.
Right.
The math of that stuff, I like, as someone who's kind of new to it still, it strikes me as like one of the most potentially fascinating under the hood kind of things.
Yeah, there's the very important 3 of is that it forces variety in deck building. So if we had a number that divided the minimum deck size, what we see, and particularly with IP driven games, is that there becomes sameness. But when you have that remain, those 2 cards or 1 card, late in the day, math is hard. People are like, oh, I'm going to list that my friend gave me or I saw on TFW 2005, if you guys start carrying deck list.
Yeah.
But I saw that deck list that I really, really thought was cool. But you know what? These 2 cards, my favorite card is Matrix of Leadership. I really want to put that in. And you feel permitted to do that.
Yeah. Well, because deck building is like, it's such a mathematical process, right? And that makes so much sense to me. Like that 3 does not let you can't just max out the good cards for consistency and then you fill the deck. Like, you're leaving that room.
Yeah, it gives people a very small amount of personalization that they feel absolutely permitted to do, even if they're pulling the deck from a list that someone else had developed. The other interesting thing that 3 of does is it forces more cards into any deck size than, say, a 4 of or 5 of limit. But we're in the low single digit, not a lot of choices. 2 of, you get a lot of randomness in the deck because you only have 2 copies. 4 of, you get a lot of sameness. So 3 of is the sweet spot for me for this particular game.
Also, just as like a really shameless completionist, 3 of is also my favorite because it just properly fills out 9-page binder pages. It makes it just easy enough to get play sets of battle cards without like being stuck chasing the 4th. Like, there's a lot of 2 ofs in the starter deck. It's going to be super straightforward to start assembling some play sets. Like, for my lousy collector side, it's also one of my favorite things.
You can't see this, but my jaw is actually hanging a little bit because I know. But I am going to plug our friends, since you brought up storage. I am going to plug our friends at Ultra Pro who have announced recently Transformers branded card game accessories.
Yeah, they've also been posting on that fan Facebook page to actually clarify some stuff about, for instance, like the pros and cons of stuffing more than 1 card into a binder page slot, which is some stuff I hadn't thought about.
We've all done that.
Yeah.
I remember walking around in high school when Magic had just come out, and I was like, I probably had, 15 or 20 stuffed into these massively distended 9-pocket things.
Did it just be blown out at the end? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like those black border stuff. They were white border edges by the time I was done with them.
It's also like, you stuff 9 cards into 1 slot. That'll hold. Now take 1 card out. The plastic is stretched such that 8 cards aren't enough to make the frictions keep working.
Yeah, see, now you gotta jam a 9th in that thing, and it's
that's where you put all your junk cards. You stick them in as filler to keep the pockets going.
So when I was, it's one of my first jobs in the tabletop gaming industry was I worked at a retail store in New York City, and I helped run. They had a sister company who ran big Magic events very early, way pre-Pro Tour. And one of the things I did was mail order. I handled mail order. And so we had these giant stuff. Well, there was a disaster, and I was cleaning up the back room for a very long time. Cards everywhere. And then, yeah.
Ugh. I've already had the character defining experience if I had a 4,500 count card box tip over. Which that became my weekend. Turns out
I laugh, but I am also sad at the same time.
Like, it's that moment. It's when you hear the noise, not the impact of the box on the floor, but that second noise afterwards, the swoosh.
Yes.
All the cards. Yeah.
the shushing of lots of cards moving over each other simultaneously.
It's the worst.
A
It's
sound
terrible.
no gamer really and truly wants to hear.
That's the reason why my sorting of all of the old Magic stuff hasn't happened, because I have stacks and stacks of that, and I'm afraid.
Also, the worst part is whatever card is on the very bottom, you have to now pick up one card off of a flat floor in the case of the room I'm in.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of hard to do 50 times.
Fan it. Get a piece of paper and fan it. Especially if it's on a flat floor, if you fan it, the air will get under up a little bit.
Oh, okay. I ended up using. I found a card I didn't care about and used that as the card spatula. I had just a couple more quick questions for you. I had kind of I call this a fun one, but I'm genuinely curious. So, because this is happening under WotC, you guys can actually say that when you turn the card sideways, it is tapped.
That's right.
If like obviously it's good for shorthand because everyone kind of says that anyway, but for the sake of paperwork and whatnot, a lot of other games have to come up with a word for it. Transformers is rife with weird Transformers made fictional jargon. Did you guys have did you have any words in mind going in the weird scenario where you're like, what if they don't want us to say tapped? Like, do you have any words in your head that could have substituted for that mechanic?
So I can sort of run through that now, but the true answer is tap. It was tapping from the beginning, tapping through from day one.
Yeah.
So we never actually fully ran that exercise, but this is something that has happened in a lot of trainings that I've done, and some at Wizards, some at not. And here's the weirdo thing, and it's actually really weird when it comes to licensed products that have these as you said, these IP specific jargon.
Mm-hmm.
Is I found you want the system words to be a little bit to the side of that so that they don't they accidentally get confused with IP jargon, especially for people who aren't deep in the IP. Like, how do you tell? Like, let's say we call it energizing. How does someone who doesn't super know Transformers know that energizing is a game system term, but energon is not?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so I found that it's actually better to have the words that describe the core game actions that define what the rule system is to be a little bit antiseptic is not the right word, but a little bit removed from IP jargon so that they are distinguishable as game rules terms.
Yes.
Now, the one place that I say that's kind of an exception is when we start naming mechanics. And the main mechanics, fierce and bold and tough, they describe heroic characters and heroic stories. You see that stuff all the time. But I can certainly imagine that once we start moving in through the game and releasing more and more products, that we might have some hard mechanic names that are a little bit more Transformers.
Oh yeah, and then you've got like I said, you've got jars and jars of them just waiting, ready to go. Old gimmick names, old gimmick styles, power linking, Allspark power. If you guys end up doing movie stuff at some point,
we are going to stay generation. I imagine for the foreseeable that for us Wizards, that's pretty far future. We're going to remain generation.
All right, that answers one of my quieter little questions, which was as a fan, one of the things I do to think ahead is think, okay, like obviously one big thing I can think about right now is, and I'm super happy to see it. Like, a lot of the character card art is coming from this old defunct mobile game that had incredible artwork done that was confined to this old defunct mobile game until now, and so that's partly that's been me saying, all right, it's awesome seeing this stuff come out. It's also been helping me kind of start predicting some stuff as far as like who might show up. Doesn't have to be answered. All I'm going to say is the Dr. Arkeville card art they did was incredible, and I'd love to see that in physical somehow.
I find it very unlikely that any of the human characters who have shown up as part of Transformers storylines will show up in this card game. We're going to keep it bots.
Okay. Because Arkeville's riding that line.
I know.
Yeah.
You were going to say that. You to say that.
That artwork of him especially really pushed it from like he's not just a guy with a metal head. This is post-cybernization Archiville in a giant robot chair.
The next thing, this is a slippery slope. Next, you're going to be telling me that we should have Nebulons side of their power suits.
I mean, yeah, it would be interesting if there were these smaller character cards that, if you turn them over, you just put them on top of an unfinished, like the artwork for a Headmaster, for instance, from the Titans Return packaging, where, hey, the card ends right at the neckline, and then you flip over this little character card, and here's a head, you just put it on top. And but that's
it would in fact be super interesting, wouldn't it?
What about Pretenders outside of the Pretender shell? From like
rip this card open and
just sprinkle it out from the middle, whatever. No.
There's another card inside. The one other question I had was...
hold on, let's go back there. Yeah, there is a ton of cool art. If you look closely, you'll notice that the 3 friends of Metroplex are not from that.
Oh! I did not know that. I had kind of assumed... I kind of checked out of that game about 4 months before it ended. I just assumed that those were left over from that stock of art.
That's original art. So
you guys already have original art happening for the game.
I have commissioned a fair amount of it for as we go forward in the future already.
Oh boy, okay, that's something I did not know, and that's making me already like with Metroplex, like with all this other stuff. That is yet another longevity hype moment for me. Because I had kind of been working off of the obviously assumption, and then you assume blah 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 makes an ASS of you and me, but I had kind of been working off the idea that like part of what could get this game kind of pushed out there faster than it might have otherwise is all this existing art asset stuff. Obviously a lot of battle cards are panels out of a lot of the IDW comic books. Which actually almost was another question I wanted to go into, which was like what was the process on panel selection for that stuff? Because that's a lot different than selecting from a stock of like artwork made for a digital card game where it's already suiting the purpose kind of by design.
Right.
Whereas
it involved reading a lot of comic books.
Excellent. I'm glad you've been reading those books because I've been seeing some.
And that was all billable hours, right?
I'm sorry.
I saw a lot of characters in those panels where I'm like, I sure hope people were reading those books because those are some good books that these panels are coming out of.
So there's a division of labor in the project, right? So I focus a little bit more on the character card art, and a coworker named Matt Smith, who's like in the world of 1 to 10, I really, when I'm being truly honest with myself, say my level of Transformers knowledge is 6 on a good day. Matt is like 8.5 or 9, and one of his primary responsibilities was to work with Hasbro and on the battle card art, and the IDW comic art provided such a good variety of things that you need to represent on battle cards. And there's a lot of good reasons for using that art. One of them was they've done so many cool things in the art of those books that they allowed us to really match up pretty well, I think, of what the cards do.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, I already saw a Facebook post of someone who said like I forgot what the card name was now, but it's one of the gear cards, weapon cards with Needlenose on it, and someone was saying they want to run that as a 3 of almost entirely because Needlenose is on it, and that's their way of getting Needlenose into their deck, day one.
Yeah, right. Like the wiki that also let us have some characters who weren't in the first set show up in art in the first set.
Mm-hmm. My one last question, kind of bouncing off what you just told us, with the art that you've got getting commissioned, and so it's art that's now getting outside of pre-existing stuff. This is a lot of this is the Artist Alley nerd in me, wanting to be able to do my due diligence and get the right stacks of cards ready for people to sign. In future sets, is there any chance we could see like a direct illustrated buy on the cards?
So for this product, we are going to be putting all of the artist credits on the website.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing digital artists for the entirety of Transformers.
Okay. if there's some intern you could find who could go like attach those to a card listing of some kind, that would be a real happy intern. I
would love to have an intern. So Marcelo's been in his Facebook page recently, as we reveal cards, he's like, oh, I did the pencils. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that as time goes on.
Okay.
Who does the art is super important to us, and as we go forward, you're going to see the same names who have been doing Transformers art for a long time showing up, like Dan Kahana and Marcelo Materi. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that probably later this fall.
Okay.
You definitely will see that.
And then just to close up, because I just saw this on the Facebook page as a response from whoever is running the Facebook page, the official one.
John Shork.
John Shork threw out a response that I think a lot of people have been curious about. Someone basically said, hey, that tandem targeting system, we ever going to see that again? And the response was a Magic 8-Ball, and I don't remember the precise one, but it was one of those Magic 8-Ball responses that said, hey, maybe just keep your eye to the sky for now.
So I want to be really clear. We recognize that a lot of people want the cards that were in the Convention Edition 2018. There are some limitations on once we do something as a Convention Edition about what when and where we can reprint it. But I will say, we hear you, and we hear the fans who know that they want really desperately. And I don't have an answer for it that I can share publicly right now, but it is something that we are aware of.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to get bolted on the end of this, that there's there's an awareness, and I think really, for the most part, it's just tandem targeting system, because it's an interesting mechanic, like a self recursing card in a way, which I would also really like to see some more of in the future, because I love graveyard manipulation, for lack of a better term.
Scrapyard, my friend. Scrapyard.
I love scrapyard cyber manipulation.
Beyond brand, Chris.
I really like the idea of cards that would be considered dead or invalid having a function past being right there on the battlefield. So I was really happy to see that in the first set in some degree.
I mean the pips on the top right for flipping, we call them pips inside the house. The pips already add part of that, because there's some interesting pip combinations that you might want to choose a card for specifically for that, as opposed to its rules text.
Right. That's a huge part of DeckCon that I'm looking forward to, is people figuring out not only the ratio of like the active cards, but the ratio of the pips to ensure it works with their team. So much math. It's really cool.
It can be if you want it to be, and that's one of the things that I like about the system, is that it lets players engage with it on multiple levels. Like, I've played this game with 7-year-olds, and do they think about that? Well, one of them. But that person is that youngster grew up to be a math prodigy, I think. But they have a great time playing at that level, right? Like, they smash bots together, they do the simple addition, it's awesome. Then you have people who are like, they care more about, is it satisfying their Transformers fan need? They would never run Decepticons and Autobots or what have you, whatever that is, but they're able to do it there. And then you have gamers, and the gamers are like, as you just said, I see the math, and I am doing the math because that's how I like to play it. And that is a conscious end result of this game and brand design. Like, we knew this going in. And the one thing that I will say that we haven't touched on is that this game is an awesome game for I'm 41. I grew up with Transformers. Lots of people who I grew up with, who are Transformers fans, have kids now that they're raising as Transformers fans. And this game we made this game, and the reason why it works on those levels is very specifically so it could be something that parents who love Transformers and are raising youngsters who love Transformers could play together with their kids and have a good experience. Both of them could.
I'm so looking forward to we have TFCon USA coming up next month, and I am excited as heck to see, because it's going to be like the perfect time. The game will be just a few weeks old. It'll be old enough for everyone to start to get into it. It will be new enough everyone's still thinking about it. We're all going to be at a convention where
I will have just muled you a box.
You will have just muled me a box. I've been doing some digging around, trying to find And then I realized that I was doing all this digging, like, how do I get a box up here to Toronto sooner than later? And then I realized I'm going to be in America in probably a month. I should bear that in mind. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this all plays out at TFCon, where I feel like that's kind of, it might not be the first. I think it's going to be one of the first major in-person play events for this game. Not organized, obviously, but of people who are interested, people of various different ages, various different backgrounds, just button heads with these cards. And I think it's going to be really cool to see how that goes.
I would love to see what your convention report about the card game.
We will me and Aaron are both going to be there. We might end up recording a dedicated aftermath just on how the game went. So
because I'm in now to the tune of 2 boxes, I think, at my FLGS. So it'll be one that I open just for me, and then one that we open together in Chicago. And there'll be enough other people around, I think, that play that we might get quite a few rounds in. And it's light enough of a game that'll be good for like, we're waiting 20 minutes for the next thing to happen. Bust out a game and see how it plays.
Yeah.
All right. Have you tried the? Would you get your? You actually have cards in front of you. Give Nemesis Prime and Cosmos a try together.
Oh, I already saw that, because Nemesis Prime makes your deck slightly thinner to run Cosmos slightly more,
and because you want to drive through your deck really fast to get Nemesis Prime to reshuffle, you end up reshuffling more. So you, even if on top of trying to time the reshuffle correctly, you just get more reshuffle. It's a very interesting deck. I'm not positive how super good it is, but it certainly is a hell of a lot.
No, I was already looking at some of the other like card reveals, and it'd probably also want to run heavy on anything that lets you draw more cards, because that's just going to burn you through that much quicker. And then people say, I don't like playing the game with you anymore, Aaron, because you always min-max things. And I say, well, maybe you shouldn't suck so
Aaron,
much.
how'd you find an infinite already? The game's only a week old. But yeah, thanks, Drew, for joining us and giving us this extra little shot of your time.
Hey, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing the game come out. Obviously, being in Toronto, I'm also looking forward to seeing the game come out outside of the States. No offense to all the Americans listening, but the Canadians running the podcast, so I get to slot that one in.
So it's releasing in a number of European and Pacific regions very shortly after the U.S. launch.
Yes. All right.
And I hear you and all of your Canadian compatriots. We don't. I don't have anything to announce, but I am working real soon to be.
I think the important thing to know is that, like, it's like, and I assumed this by the language already, but I'd seen people starting to go like, is this game even going to come out in Canada? And it's kind of like, well, yes. I don't see a scenario where it doesn't, but it is good to know that you're hearing us up here. I always say down here, which is really silly because we're up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know. And like I said, thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Aaron, also for hooking us up.
Hey, I was super excited to have that serendipity moment happen at Gen Con, and I'm glad that we've gotten a chance to sit down and have this talk.
Thanks, Drew, for not running away from Aaron, because I know the feeling. Yeah. And it's...
Oh, he was pleasant and welcome. What was it?
Wow, Aaron, how'd you do that?
I was tired from running Robo Rally. That's always my excuse at Gen Con.
Oh, you are deep in the Robo.
Yeah.
You guys need to have a Robo Rally throwdown, and I need to watch so I can learn how to play Robo Rally.
Depends which edition we're going to play.
Well, so at Gen Con, the giant Lego robot version, that's the one I have the most time on, because I'm the one out there kicking the robots around to make them work for everybody else.
I was stuck. The only time I will say stuck when it comes to working my own booth and promoting my own products is in the case where there was something that I desperately wanted to do that was not in my booth. And at Gen Con, that was it.
Well, it'll be there again next year, so Gen Con next year, let me know. We'll see if we can slide you in. We got Dr. Garfield to play on it, and then had the owner of the board and Dr. Garfield have an argument about how fast conveyor belts work next to regular conveyor belts.
Aaron, all you guys got to do is slap some Autobot Decepticon logos onto the robots, and then technically it's relevant to Drew's game that he is promoting at the show.
He's got to go do some research real quick.
I will do some, see if that will.
Yeah. All right. Thanks you all. Thanks for coming by. Thanks to all of you out there for listening. And if you are coming to TFCon and you're interested in this game, we're going to try to play a whole bunch of it at TFCon when we have the chance to. So, you'll have people to play with if you bring some there. And given how Aaron is getting like 15 boxes of it, because he just said out loud he is, there'll probably be plenty of spare commons and whatnot too, if you just want to jump right on.
I don't know if it's going to 15 boxes now. Drew, do you have any sort of bulk discount or something?
I was waiting.
What's it like being a retailer, Aaron?
Yeah.
Guys, it was awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love doing it, and I hope to do it again.
Yeah, no worries. It was lots of fun.
Anytime you want, you let us know.
What the fuck's going on down there?